Alright, welcome to another episode of Hot Rod City. Today we're working on this V8 Subaru, gonna work on the serpentine system. I originally saved the serpentine off my 350, off my pickup, but it's too tall against the motor, so I gotta build a whole new serpentine system. Basically the way it goes, crank, water pump, the original alternator here, power steering, idler, AC, tensioner. I'm getting rid of tensioner, AC, and the idler. The alternator is getting moved to a lower position. Power steering is getting moved to the passenger side because that's where all the power steering lines are on the Subaru. It's a metric Saginaw pump, so it just hooks right up. The way this belt is going to go, because it's a reverse flow water pump, it's going to follow this way, come back this way, and come down there. It's not perfectly symmetrical, but it turns what I need it to turn. So that's how it's going to be. This is the old bracket. This is the old bracket for the power steering pump and the alternator. I just pulled the pulley off power steering pump to get it off of here, and I got this plate I dug up from the backyard, and I'm going to line this up right here. So we're going to be able to mount this right on the plate. Just trace it on out. Alright, I got the piece drilled out and cleaned it up a little bit. I've already marked for the next piece to be cut. So I'm trying to make just a mount for the alternator. Alright, as you can see, you got the plate mounted in here. I went and got new bolts for it, so they got built-in washers just to make it look a little more factory kind of deal. Drilled a hole over here for the alternator. So that's going to be the starting mount for it, the rear mount. So all you got to do is space it out. It needs to be spaced out 2 inches from the head. So it's 1/4 inch plate steel, so I need 1 3/4 inch of an inch spaced outward. So what I got here is it's a little piece of tubing I got, or some tubing pipe, whatever the hell you want to call it, from the hardware store. This is the bolt for the alternator. Same size, works perfect. So I'm going to cut an 1 3/4 piece and get this alternator mounted on here. Alright, I went ahead and cut a piece of the tubing at 1 3/4. Go ahead and get this alternator mounted. There. Now that's where it's got to go. Now that it's held in place long enough to, good enough to figure out, go ahead and work on the power steering pump mount. And we'll come back to this, because it's enough to be able to, as you can see, line up the belt. So I'll go ahead and mount that. Let's get started on making the plate for the power steering. Alright, this car already has a fuel pump built into the car. And also, there might be plans of going fuel injected later, but in the meantime, we're just going to go ahead and put a regulator on that one. So I don't need the mechanical driven one, so I took that off. And I'm actually going to use the spot where it was. It had this plate on it. You can see there's a hole in it. And I went ahead and made a new one at a 1/4 inch plate and mounted it up there. I'm going to use that as one of the mounting points for the plate. I'm going to mount the power steering pump. Power steering pump, I've already reinstalled the pulley. I'm going to use the rear two mounts to get the initial fit. Once it's where it's got to go, I'll pull it back off and I'm going to make a new plate bracket to go that goes in between the two, the pulley and the pump itself, and to make another bracket to stabilize it more. So let's get to it. To put this where we want, so it's a little closer to the center, I'm not going to mount it flush on the head. I'm going to actually kind of move it, have it closer to this point. So I need to notch out for the head. So leveled out. And with the temporary mount holding, made this plate, bolts in with the water pump, holds the bracket in. I'm going to change out this bolt for a stud, and we're going to mount this piece of tube, or piece of pipe, I already welded a washer to it and grounded it down. So it'll sit in there like so. And drill out the front large enough to reach in there with a socket and a ratchet. I've done a little tweaking to this. I just cleaned it up, cleaned up the edges, missed a spot there. But the tube is welded all the way on, the piece of pipe, Schedule 40 pipe. And I took my drill press and I put it in my drill press and I drilled a couple of holes. Enough to where I could take a die grinder and then just hog the rest of it out. It took me a while, I need new bits. I have to put that on my list. But I've already fitted it, test fitted to the car and pulled it back off. Because I'm going to pull the rear piece off, the piece on the back of the pump off, so I can go ahead and start making that. Alright, so bracket off for the alternator. The way I'm going to tighten this belt is kind of an old school traditional way, by just pivoting the alternator. Now what I'm going to do is actually make an adjuster. So I'm going to utilize this bolt on the top of it. I have a turnbuckle that is adjusted almost all the way in at this point. It's going to go here, and I'm going to make a bracket for it. So that way I can adjust it properly. And in order to do this as well, alright, this is the alternator bolt. Here's the turnbuckle. As you can see, I got a lot of play here. So what I'm going to do, I already have this side mocked up, is I have a washer on this side and a washer on this side. I'm going to go ahead and weld them onto this, and then I'm going to do this side. Alright, I welded this up with my TIG welder. Not bad for my second go around. Look at that, isn't that pretty? Ooh, see the detail on it? No filler rod, I just heated the Jesus out of it. So what I'm going to do is, this is a new adjuster. One's reverse thread, one's correct thread, and you turn this one way and it just makes it, pushes and it pulls it. So it's going to go right here on the alternator on the back to keep things from alternating. And I already added this bracket here. I'll give you a shot. And just going to put this on here, and then the belt, the pre-stretched belt goes on here. So now I'm going to cut it and measure it on there. Alright, as you can sort of see, for the most part, serpentine system's on. We're going to use, only thing I got left to do is cut the belt to length and go get a new one. I'm going to do some fine tuning and nice welding and clean up all on these brackets and stuff that I made when I pulled everything apart to paint and pull the motor out to put the clutch and all that stuff in. And thanks for sticking along for this episode. Rate, comment, and all that jazz. Don't forget to subscribe.